that the Italian legislation is incoherent in itself, and therefore, in order to respect the obligation undertaken under the European Convention on Human Rights, it's necessary that the Italian legislation is framed in a coherent way. But this didn't really change the law, and still now we are uncertain from a practical point of view on the availability of this service. Let's talk about the European dimension of patients' rights in cross-border health care. So, as you might know, there is a recent directive, number 24 of 2011, which concerns the patients' rights concerning cross-border health care. The main focus of this directive is on the rights to have access to health care abroad, and then once back in the home country to apply for reimbursement before the national health care service. Of course, these treatments this directive concerns all medical treatments, and very interestingly, it is limited to a reciprocity condition. I can have the reimbursement of the medical expenses I had abroad just if that particular treatment is already provided by my national healthcare service. So, does it apply to ART? Apparently, just in case I am seeking that particular kind of ART, which is already provided by the Italian legislation. But at the same time, we have to remember that there are some requirements that make this possibility a reality. You have to comply with some standards. The standards concern, for example, the fact that you could not, as a patient, have access to that treatment within a due time concerning your individual situation, the illness, the degree of pain, and so on. So we have to remember that this it has to be considered a freedom, but it is quite limited. Moreover, the directive is interesting because among its general goals, it provides for the raising of healthcare standards among all member states, and provides for the pursuit of a better quality of treatments in all member states. So, even though its application in the field of reproductive care is really very limited, there are some principles which could be of help. And these are, first of all, the establishment of European reference networks. These are centers of excellence, and they should be specialized in the treatment of rare diseases. So something which could affect genetic illnesses and similar situations. Moreover, the directive boosts the creation and establishment of professional networks around Europe. So doctors from one country to the other should be put in contact and talk together. Third, more importantly, the establishment of national contact points. National contact points are the institutions which in the home states will be responsible for the delivery of information on medical services available in other countries, because under the directive, national contact points should be put in contact together, and they should exchange information about medical treatments. This, in my own opinion, is the real challenge of the directive in terms of access to IVF cross-border. Why? Because with reference to CBRC, we do have a huge problem of information. A problem of information which depends, of course, on several grounds. And in my opinion, we need that in order to grant equality to all persons who desire to have access to reproductive care, information should circulate in a more uniform way around Europe, and this conversely could even help to avoid or at least limit exploitation. Moreover, through the combination of the European Directive on cross-border healthcare and the other one on tissue, we could argue that at a European level we are going through the achievement of a common standard of health and safety requirements for patients. So all of these provisions are enacted in order to protect patients. And now, just a quick example. This is not a Sudoku. This is what one day appeared on my Facebook personal page, together with commercials of shoes, flights, hotels, books, and whatever. And it says, would you like to calculate your fertility range? Just enter your age and we'll tell you. And this, I'm 31, and this is what happened. So I'm sorry that this is in Italian because I have Facebook in Italian actually, but you can see that at the age of 18, your fertility rate is above 80%, and then you go through 30 years and it has become 69. My age is 60%, 66%, and then down, down, and down. This commercial is very interesting because it shows that if I go for a social freezing, I can keep my fertility rate as high as it is today. Is this a complete and fair information? I'm not really sure about it because I guess I'm a quite competent consumer, as it has been a few years I'm studying this issue, but I'm not that sure that somebody else could be able, any other women could be able to understand properly what is the meaning of this commercial. So, issue to be considered. Information is difficult in ART concerning medical, subjective, and linguistic grounds. There are some factors that have to be taken into consideration, and they are patient's knowledge, the availability of instruments such as the internet, doctors, medical facilities, and the possibility to get information. Another issue to be considered is the one of resources. Beyond national prohibitions, we have to take into consideration that member states who are limiting access to ART will have any way to take care of patients once they come back, for example, for prenatal and postnatal diagnosis, follow-up, and so on. And therefore, to ensure patient safety is a responsibility that should be undertaken on a common level around the European Union. Could we talk about a European right to fair information on CBRC? If we take the perspective of free movement, we can say that the liberty to secure, complete, and independent information on services legally available abroad is not at stake because we are already certain about it. The problem is how to ensure it equally to all European citizens. And moreover, for example, the issue of commercialization should be tackled starting from a common European standard in order to avoid undue exploitation or illegitimate practices that could be put in place in other countries. And all of this is aimed at ensuring patient safety and quality of healthcare even beyond national bounds. And I'm now leaving the floor to my colleague who will go more in depth on the Italian situation. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks to Lucia, and I try to be as brief as possible, also because I'm the last barrier between you and the lunch, and I know that are you watching me, but effectively you are seeing a big moussaka or whatever you like, so I will try to be very brief. So I will focus in the second part of our presentation on two issues which are especially challenging actually in Italy. Everything is challenging in Italy, but gamete donation and surrogacy as becoming very crucial and central, especially because they represent in a very vivid way what I call the chain reaction produced with the entry into force of the Law 40 of 2004. A chain reaction which has both a legal but also a social dimension, which started with the entry into force of a very strict regulation. I just skipped this point. And then it provoked and is still having an impact on the couples, Italian couples, so a social impact. As statistics that Lucia described at the beginning of our presentation clearly shown, that this reaction at the social level provokes also a reaction by part of couples, which express itself through the phenomenon of CBRC, and on this phenomenon I will focus in my last 7 slides, so you can start the countdown. And I will focus also on the issue of equality, the equality of couples having access in Italy or abroad, and the risk of discrimination based not only on the healthy condition of the member of the couple, but on their economical and financial capacity. Eventually, this chain reaction has included also the judiciary, the judicial response to the social reaction. Let's see, especially it will be very clear when approaching the surrogacy and the consequences of the link between surrogacy agreement and the CBRC. The Italian judges is calling to answer and to react in order to understand in what extent the Italian couples might have been called to be liable for having access to fertility treatment not allowed in Italy, and so moving abroad. On the one hand, so the criminal dimension of the liability of the couple, and on the other side, the definition of parenthood. Once, especially with regard to surrogacy, couples having access to surrogacy abroad came back to Italy and declaring before the Italian institution, the Italian authority, a legal link with the newborn child. All this chain reaction leads to the actual situation in Italy, which is effectively one of legal and social uncertainty, on which I will focus very briefly in my last point. I skipped this slide because I just want to make clear the provision that prohibits both gamete donation and surrogacy in Italy, Article 4, at least before the decision of the Italian Constitutional Court last June that quashed down both the violation and the criminal offenses that the law provided as a violation of the ban. So actually, although effectively Italian couples actually are allowed to have access also within the Italian territory to gamete donation, but the system is not still running effectively and properly. Surrogacy, the law prohibits any surrogacy agreement and punishes the violation of the ban with 2 years of imprisonment, up to 2 years of imprisonment, and a fine, which can be very up to 1 million euros. So, which is the social impact of this legislative structure? And now, for describe this impact, I will focus on gamete donation, and especially to the reasoning of the Italian Constitutional Court in the decision. I think you already discussed it on the first day of the conference this June. In this decision, I want to focus on the reasoning of the constitutional judges, because they are aware of the phenomenon of CBRC, and we will see that this phenomenon have entered into the reasoning of the court as one of the more decisive arguments on which the Italian Constitutional Court quashed down the prohibition. According to the court, Italian citizens can go abroad in order to have access to techniques prohibited within the Italian legal framework, recognizing that it happened in a very high number of cases. Accordingly, Italian legislature and the Law 40 provides for regulation the effects of the eventual violation of the ban of the gamete donation. Italian legislature, and I'm also quoting the court, being aware that gamete donation is allowed in many European countries, decided to adequately regulate the effects which can derive from the reproductive tourism, especially with regard to the legal relationship among the involved subjects, so the prospective parents and the newborn child. And in this sense, the Italian court consider that the legislature, the Italian Parliament, have acted properly when introducing a regulation and provide a rule in case of a violation of this gamete donation abroad. But at the same time, the constitutional judges declares that this link between prohibition and the regulation of its violation shows and have provoked paradoxical dynamics, because the law introduced as it was originally drafted, so before the decision of the Constitutional Court, provokes an unjustified different treatment of couples affected by the worst pathology, let's say the absolute infertility, on the ground of their economical and financial capacity. Accordingly, the scheme ruled by the law becomes an intolerable prerequisite for the effective exercise of a fundamental right, to have the capacity, the economical and financial resources to go abroad and to have access to gamete donation, which is denied exclusively to those couples lacking financial resources required to go abroad. And this is the more interesting part of the reasoning of the court, because the court is saying that the reason of the indirect discrimination is not a factual one, but is something that the same law have directly produced. So the outcome, this inequality of access between the same couple, between the couple which have the same kind of infertility, is not due to factual reasons, but it is a direct effect of the legal prohibition, of the prohibition introduced by the law. And also on that ground, the Italian Constitutional Court quashed down the absolute nature of the prohibition regarding the gametes donation. What about surrogacy? Surrogacy, which is still being prohibited in Italy, becomes relevant to evaluate the third reaction, the judicial one. On both dimensions, the criminal dimension, the liability of couple, as I told before, I have not the time to focus on this case. I will focus on the civil dimension, the definition of legal parenthood following a surrogacy agreement signed abroad, when the couples come back to Italy and declare the parenthood. But let's to be aware that there's actually in the last 2 years a plurality of cases regarding the criminal responsibility of the couples as a consequence of surrogacy agreement, especially for false declaration regarding the parenthood and the link with the newborn child, but not directly for having violated the prohibition provided for by the law. If we focus on the definition of parenthood, according to the case law, the Italian case law, Italy, in this context, it looks more as a common law system, but it's still being a civil law system. So the case law is not a formal source of law, but there's in the last 10 years there was like 40 cases regarding directly or indirectly the application, the enforcement of the law 40. So, according to the more recent case law, the definition of parenthood in case of surrogacy made abroad shows a discrepancy within the case law. The biological link, at least with one of the members of the couple, in most cases, is decisive. In order to understand if the parenthood can be recognized to the couple. But if we focus on 2 recent cases, one of the Supreme Court of the Italian Supreme Court, and the other more recent, more or less 2 weeks ago, first instance tribunal in Varese, we have very different approaches and a very different reasoning and decision in recognizing or not to recognize parenthood and a link between prospective parents and the newborn child. And I will briefly focus on these 2 cases, especially for letting you aware of the role of the best interest of the child in these 2 decisions on the one hand, and the role of the European Court of Human Rights case law on the other, because especially with regard to the recent case of Menesson versus France, because again the 2 tribunals used and interpreted in a very different way these 2 issues before more or less the same or quite similar cases. On the one hand, we have the Supreme Court, according to which the declaration of parenthood is invalid because it violates the Italian public order. In this case, there wasn't any biological link between the couple and the children. So, in this case, the Supreme Court, the decision not to recognize any legal relationship between the couple and the child does not violate the best interest, the welfare of the child. And this is the crucial point, the focal point of the decision. Why? According to the Supreme Court, it's up to the legislature decide and to tell and provide for the normative means that better and best protect the best interest and the welfare of the child. And according to the Supreme Court, the legislature considered not unreasonably that the interest of the child is guaranteed by attributing motherhood to the woman giving birth to the child. In this case, the male member of the couple didn't have any link, biological link with the children. Accordingly, according to the court, is adoption the means chosen by the legislator to legitimize parenthood when a biological link is lacking. So adoption is, according to this decision, the only way that the legislator reasonably decided to put in action in those cases when a biological link is missing, instead of the mere agreement between private parties, which is the case of surrogacy agreement. On the other hand, the first instance tribunal 2 weeks ago completely changed the perspective. According to the tribunal, the interest of the child must prevail on the false, also on the false declaration of parenthood made by the couple once came back to Italy. Why? The tribunal focused on 3 essential reasons. The interest of the child, especially when one of the members of the couple is the biological parent, again, the biological link and its relevance in this context must prevail on the competing public interest to detect false declaration on the legal parenthood made by the couple. And according to this tribunal, which changed the view, if we compare the reasoning with the one of the Supreme Court, the best interest of the child is to guarantee a stable legal status, which is at the same time coherent with the social situation. So the prevalence of the social relationship on the biological one. And the tribunal, interestingly, based its reasoning also on the case Menesson versus France, referring to the duty for the state to protect the right to identity of the child by recognizing and defining the parenthood and a link between the couple and the newborn child. To conclude, final remarks. Very briefly, first point, chain reaction generated by Law 40 produced an ongoing uncertainty, and Lucia already mentioned, so I skipped this point, in terms of legal relationship, we already seen, fundamental rights guarantee of both, not only patient, but all individuals involved, and to the right of information. Second point, CBRC is a physiological phenomenon if we have in mind the freedom of movement, at least within EU, but it can become pathological when too many differences is existing among different legal systems. Third conclusion, the role of the judiciary, at least within the Italian legal system. Judiciary can, and in a certain way must, limit the effects of a rigid legislative framework, for instance, interpreting according to the Constitution the law, and can also call for lawmakers' intervention, especially indirectly, but cannot address prospective parents to the best choice. Thank you very much. This is our website and the name of the journal, which is always open for contribution. You can write in English, Spanish, French, Italian, and we are working on other new languages. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Ευχαριστούμε πολύ τους δύο ερευνητές από την Ιταλία που μας έδωσαν μια πολύ καλή εικόνα της καταστάσεως που υπάρχει εκεί. Νομίζω ότι θα πρέπει να προχωρήσουμε άμεσα στη συζήτηση. Θα ήθελα απλά να ενημερώσω ότι έχουμε έναν χρονικό περιορισμό και αυτός είναι ότι 3 η ώρα πρέπει να αποχωρήσουν οι μεταφραστές μας, άρα θα πρέπει πριν από τις 3 να έχουμε τελειώσει. Δεν θέλω να αποθαρρύνω κανέναν από τη συζήτηση, απλώς να προσπαθήσουμε να είμαστε σύντομοι στις ερωτήσεις και απαντήσεις. Ερωτήσεις παρακαλώ. Η κυρία Παπαδοπούλου θα ήθελε να προθερμάνει το κλίμα.
Έχω μία γενική ερώτηση, κυρίως προς τους Ιταλούς συναδέλφους, σχετικά με το πολύ ασφικτικά μη επιτρεπτικό, ας το ονομάσω έτσι, πλαίσιο στην Ιταλία. Αν συγκρίνουμε την Ιταλία με την Ελλάδα και την Ισπανία, κοινωνικά, ακόμη και από άποψη θρησκείας, δηλαδή η Ιταλία όπως και η Ισπανία μοιράζονται έναν πολύ ισχυρό καθολικισμό, ο οποίος πολλές φορές θεωρείται ως υπαίτιος της πιο αυστηρής ρύθμισης της Ιταλίας, ο οποίος όμως δεν επέδρασε έτσι στην Ισπανία. Στην Ελλάδα επίσης έχουμε μια πολύ ισχυρή Ορθόδοξη Εκκλησία, κρατούσα, η οποία επίσης δεν επιβλήθηκε. Έχουμε ένα πολύ επιτρεπτικό πλαίσιο ως γνωστόν. Θέλω λοιπόν την γνώμη σας, γιατί στην Ιταλία υπήρξε αυτή η αυστηρή νομοθεσία. Και επιτρέψτε μου ένα σχόλιο επίσης, θα ήθελα να σχολιάσετε μια δική μου υπόθεση εργασίας, γιατί συνέβη αυτό. Σκέφτηκα λοιπόν, και θέλω πραγματικά την άποψή σας, γιατί είναι κάτι που ερευνούμε και με την κυρία Κόκοτα στο πλαίσιο του προγράμματος σε σχέση με την Ιταλία. Σκέφτηκα ότι ίσως αυτό οφείλεται στο συντηρητισμό των πολιτικών δυνάμεων περισσότερο, παρά στην επίδραση της Καθολικής Εκκλησίας. Και ναι, τα τελευταία χρόνια νομίζω ότι είναι πολύ έντονη η επίδραση του μπερλουσκονισμού. Ο Μπερλουσκόνι, δηλαδή η εποχή Μπερλουσκόνι, νομίζω ότι πήγε πολύ πίσω την Ιταλική κοινωνία. Αλλά και πριν από αυτό, νομίζω ότι ευθύνεται ο συντηρητισμός του Ιταλικού Κομμουνιστικού Κόμματος, που σε αντίθεση με τα σοσιαλιστικά-σοσιαλδημοκρατικά κόμματα της Ελλάδας και της Ισπανίας, δεν ήταν τόσο φιλελεύθερο στο επίπεδο του κοινωνικού φιλελευθερισμού ενώ ήταν αριστερό, αλλά ανήκε σε μία, θα έλεγα, όχι τόσο φιλελεύθερη, για να μην πω αντιφιλελεύθερη αριστερά, σε αντίθεση με τα σοσιαλιστικά κόμματα της Ισπανίας και της Ελλάδας, που ήταν η πιο φιλελεύθερη αριστερά. Θέλω λοιπόν το σχόλιο σας στο πρώτο ερώτημα και στη δική μου υπόθεση εργασίας. Ευχαριστώ.
Άλλη ερώτηση. You keep the questions for... Yeah. Okay.
Θα ήθελα να ρωτήσω τον κύριο Μοκάνου αν πιστεύει πως... μια εκτίμηση να μας δώσει, μάλλον, όχι αν πιστεύει, μια εκτίμηση του αν εφαρμοστεί η οδηγία, η προβλέψη της οδηγίας, ιατρικός, πόσο πιθανό είναι να έχουμε, σε τι προσέγγιση θα είναι σίγουροι τα αποτελέσματα μιας εξέτασης του γεννητικού υλικού ως προς την ασφάλεια που θα έχει για το παιδί που θα γεννηθεί και για τους γονείς. Διότι οι εξετάσεις τις οποίες ανέφερε, αν γίνουν, είναι απολύτως βέβαιο ότι έτσι θα είναι, ή θα υπάρχει ένα ποσοστό αβεβαιότητας και πάλι, ένα ποσοστό στο οποίο πάλι θα υπάρχει πιθανότητα να προκύψει μια γενετική δυσαρμονία, μια γενετική ανομαλία. Ευχαριστώ.
Άλλη ερώτηση.
Ναι, ευχαριστώ. Ήθελα να ρωτήσω στα παιδιά από την Ιταλία για το εξής. Μπορώ να το πω και στα Ιταλικά. Ίσως.
Δεν καταλάβουν οι άλλοι. Καλύτερα στα ελληνικά χρόνια.
Όχι, θα το πω και στα ελληνικά. Στις πρόσφατες αλλαγές στο νόμο 40, κυρίαρχο ρόλο, κατά τη γνώμη σας, έχει παίξει ο ιατρικός τουρισμός, που δημιουργεί μια ανισότητα, ας πούμε, παραβίαση της αρχής της ισότητας, της βιωτικής αρχής της ισότητας, πιο κυρίαρχο ρόλο, ή η προστασία της privacy όσον αφορά τις αλλαγές που σχετίζονται με την ετερόλογη. Αν το έχουν καταλάβει, πώς θέλω να το πω και στα Ιταλικά.
Όχι.
Okay.
Τι εννοείς ετερόλογη? Εννοείς ότι ο Άρια τρίτο...
Οι αλλαγές που έχουν γίνει κάποιες αλλαγές στο νόμο 40 τελευταία, που έχει γίνει πιο ανεκτή η ετερόλογη, δεν έχει γίνει κάποιες αλλαγές, δεν έχουν γίνει το συνταγματικό δικαστήριο στην Ιταλία. Ναι, σε αυτές τις αλλαγές, αν έχει παίξει ρόλο στη δημιουργία αυτών των αλλαγών, αν έχει παίξει ρόλο ο κοινωνικός τουρισμός, τουρισμός, ο προκρεατίβος, ο αναπαραγωγικός τουρισμός, ή αν έχει παίξει ρόλο περισσότερο η ανάγκη να τονιστεί ο ρόλος της privacy. Δηλαδή, στη μια περίπτωση είναι μια πρακτική ανάγκη, στην άλλη περίπτωση είναι μια πιο ιδεολογική και θεωρητικά στηριγμένη άποψη.
Ευχαριστούμε. Yes, yes, please.
Hello, thank you very much. This is for Lucia and Simone. I wondered, what do you know about how people actually navigate? You know, if it's such a sort of regimented case in Italy and it's so forbidden and criminal, how do people navigate that in their everyday lives, having used donor gametes, gone to Spain or somewhere like that, or indeed use surrogacy? Do they, you know, is it, you know, how do they manage that, or indeed are people as rigid as the government in terms of thinking these are terrible practices, or is actually everyday life more fluid than that? Thank you.
Okay. Άλλη ερώτηση, παρακαλώ.
Γεια σας. Η ερώτησή μου αφορά όλους τους ομιλητές. Διάβασα πρόσφατα σε μια εφημερίδα για την κρυοσιτήρηση οαρίων και συγκεκριμένα ότι 2 μεγάλες αμερικανικές εταιρείες μάλλον έδωσαν και επίδομα μάλιστα στις εργαζόμενες, σε όσες το επιθυμούν, ώστε να κρυοσιτηρήσουν τα όρια τους και να μην διακόψουν την εργασία τους για να ικανοποιήσουν την καριέρα τους ίσως. Το άρθρο έλεγε ότι αυτό δημιουργεί πολλά ζητήματα ηθικά, νομικά και θα ήθελα απλά να ακούσω κάποιες σκέψεις πάνω σε αυτό.
Βέβαια, δεν σχετίζεται άμεσα με αυτό που συζητήσαμε, αλλά δεν θα αποφύγουμε να τοποθετηθούμε στο τέλος. Άλλη ερώτηση. Εγώ θα ήθελα να κάνω μία ερώτηση στην κυρία Θόρν και στους συναδέλφους από την Ιταλία. Επειδή ξέρω ότι το πλαίσιο το νομικό είναι πολύ αυστηρό, προβλέπονται ποινές για τους γιατρούς που παραπέμπουν ζευγάρια στο εξωτερικό. Δηλαδή, αν εγώ είμαι γιατρός στη Γερμανία και μου έρθει ένα ζευγάρι για σάρογκαση και πει εγώ δεν κάνω σάρογκαση, αλλά μπορεί να πας στην Ελλάδα, στο τάδε κέντρο, ή μπορεί να πας στην Ινδία, στο Δίνα κέντρο, να κάνεις σάρογκαση. Το ίδιο ισχύει για την Ιταλία. Προβλέπονται ποινές για τους γιατρούς οι οποίοι παραπέμπουν στο εξωτερικό για τη θεραπεία. Άλλη ερώτηση. Παρακαλώ.
Thank you very much. Actually, in comparison with the question already posed by Dr. Darladzis, I would just like to ask what would be the liabilities, either civil or penal, for any commercial company who provides services to couples facing fertility problems when the baby has already born outside the country of origin, but when coming back, it faces the applicant, the commissioning parent, are facing serious problems with its civil status. Thank you.
Νομίζω ότι αυτό είχε ήδη συζητηθεί από την κυρία Γραμματικάκη πριν, αλλά το θέμα αυτό ότι των επιπλοκών που μπορεί να παρουσιαστούν όταν έχει γεννηθεί το παιδί και έχει γυρίσει πίσω στη χώρα του. Αυτό εννοείται, υποθέτω, Όσον
αφορά στην ουσία, its registration.
Δεν κατάλαβα. Το ερώτημα είναι το αν θα καταγραφεί στα δημοτολόγια ή το θέμα της ευθύνης, γιατί ανέφερες για ευθύνη. Υπάρχει...
Ναι, ακριβώς αυτό.
Γιατί αυτό το θέμα είναι ένα σοβαρό ζήτημα, το θέμα του liability, δηλαδή ποιος έχει την ευθύνη. Γιατί έγινε η πράξη στην Ινδία, ας το μετακινήσουμε μακριά από εμάς, έγινε η πράξη λοιπόν σε μια άλλη χώρα και μετά είτε το παιδί παρουσίασε πρόβλημα, παραδείγματος χάρη νομίζω το έδειξε ο κ. Μοκάνου, διαπιστώνεται ότι έχει οικιστική είνωση, ή παρουσιάστηκε άλλο πρόβλημα και μετά ποιος έχει, αλλά βρίσκεται πλέον στη χώρα προέλευσης, αυτό εννοείται. Και το θέμα του liability και ιδιαίτερα αυτών που μεσολαβούν. Δεν είναι αυτό, δεν εννοούσατε? Ωραία. Ναι.
Θα μου επιτρέψετε και εμένα μια ερώτηση?
Λίμωνο. Δικαιούσε και περισσότερο από μία.
Λοιπόν, για τη Λίνα την Παπαδοπούλου, που ξέρω ότι έχει ασχοληθεί με ζητήματα ισότητας των φύλων, σε συνέχεια της ερώτησης που έκανε η κυρία πριν για την απόφαση της Facebook και της Apple, κατά την άποψη της κυρίας Παπαδοπούλου, αυτή η συγκεκριμένη απόφαση είναι κάτι το οποίο θα απελευθερώσει το ίδιο τις γυναίκες ή απλά θα ενισχύσει το κοινωνικό πρότυπο της γυναίκας η οποία πρέπει οπωσδήποτε να γίνει μάνα?
Okay. Άλλη ερώτηση. Εάν δεν υπάρχει άλλη ερώτηση, με την επιφύλαξη του χρόνου μπορεί να δεχθούμε καμιά εξτρά που μπορεί να γεννηθεί. Θα παρακαλούσα τώρα τους ομιλητές μας, ξεκινώντας από την κυρία Πέτρα Θόρν και προχωρώντας εκ δεξιών προς τα αριστερά, να έχουμε τις απαντήσεις τους. Θα πρότεινα... Okay.
Okay? Yes. Okay, thank you. There was a question on how people navigate donor gametes when they've done them abroad, yes, and when it's illegal in their home country. I can let you know that from Germany, many couples who do egg donation abroad consider it their right to go abroad to do egg donation. Many say it should be allowed, especially since donor insemination in Germany is allowed. At the same time, they are worried when they talk about it. They worry what reactions there are from others. They know they don't have to be worried about their legal implications because the Embryo Protection Act exempts them from any legal responsibility. Yes, but they are worried what others think about them, and many of them would like to be open. This is a very interesting experience that I make when I counsel couples for donor insemination. Many initially want to keep it a secret, but when I talk to couples who consider egg donation, many more consider openness from the beginning, which is not really in line with the fact that it's prohibited in Germany. Yes, it's an interesting experience. Yeah. Let me talk about Facebook and Apple and their offer to pay for social freezing. In Germany, there was a huge debate when we read about this in the media, and there were worries of the issues that you have already mentioned. The worry was, does it actually liberate women? Does it allow more options for women? Or does it restrict women in their family building options? I think especially Germany, we need to look at a much better childcare system. We have to make sure that as few couples as possible resort to reproductive technologies and as many couples as possible have children at an age where there are no biological factors hindering reproduction. And this is something that we need to discuss in Germany, maybe in other countries as well. But this would actually make possibilities, medical possibilities such as social freezing, unimportant for many women. So this is something that we should tackle. Yes, we have to look at medical possibilities as a last resort before any other options that we as a society can control to some degree are available. Yeah. Your questions as to whether physicians are sanctioned is a very clear yes.
Yes.
No physician in Germany would openly recommend couples to undergo a treatment that is not in line with our Embryo Protection Act. Yeah. Very clearly.
Even in cases of genetic diseases?
It doesn't matter what the medical diagnosis is. The treatment is prohibited, yes, and doctors would have to pay a fine, would lose their license. There would be many very negative consequences for them. We also discuss this issue as counselors because we're not quite sure what situation we're in. Personally, my attitude is that psychosocial counseling, like psychotherapy, does not tell patients what to do, but we discuss options with them. We help them make decisions, and in the end, they take the decisions. But we are not quite sure, and I know that many counselors in Germany do not counsel couples who are considering egg donations because they're not quite clear what the legal consequences are for them. Yeah.
Thin ice. They feel they are on thin ice.
On very thin ice, very yes.
Okay. Thank you. Edgar?
Mr. Chair, I'm not going to talk for 20 minutes, but I would like to show something in response to question 2. I'll firstly answer question 1. One has to assume that the EUTCD is implemented. So that's an assumption we're starting from. The reality of IVF is that it is a medical treatment that has risks. And any reputable service should have that as the first page in their information brochure. So if a couple needs IVF, they will automatically have at least a 1% increased risk of a child with a congenital abnormality compared to the general population. And if a couple needs ICSI, which is the injection of a sperm into an oocyte, their risk of of having a child with a congenital abnormality is 2% higher than the general population. So if the question refers to testing for hepatitis and so on, obviously being law and the competent authority doing its job, there should be no clinic anywhere in Europe that does not test for hepatitis C, HIV and so on. If it is in relation to the PGD diagnosis, let's say, an abnormal baby being born after PGD testing, it's well established that with current methods there's still a margin of error, somewhere between 0.5% to 1%. So all such couples are medically advised to avail of other methods of testing during pregnancy, so to ensure that this child is as much as possible genetically healthy as desired. And of course, last is if the epigenetic issues come into play, we still know very little about it, but the figures I've given you, 1% and 2%, are the best we can quote to all patients that go through IVF. In relation to the Apple and Facebook initiative, I believe it's a con job, okay? This is all my personal opinion, don't quote me on it, please, but I believe you have to be realistic. I'm looking for a specific document that this is it. Just before my talk, I looked at the mean age of women at childbirth in 2009. This is 6 years ago. And you can see the average age in the OECD countries is here, 27. Bottom here, Mexico with 21. So women at age 21 have their first child in Mexico. But you can see here, OECD 27. Look where Greece is, here, close to the right. And look at other countries, UK, Germany, Italy, Spain. So women are leaving it later and later and later to have a child. And this is very evident, and allow me to scroll down here. Look at this wonderful graph there. The first graph that is this one, this is the average age in 1970s. So a Greek woman would have her first child at age 24. In the 80s, it moved further down, the dotted one, and in 2008, I think, or 9, is this curve. So first child at age 32. So what do you think will happen to this curve if every single girl in the world will decide to freeze her eggs? Obviously, it will be completely to 50 and 60. But have you considered how this will alter society? Have you considered how the child that you will have when you're 50 might have no grandparents? Nobody to help you because everybody else has done the same thing and they're just having their children at the same time as you with no grandparents, so they can't babysit for you. Have you decided, or maybe you should make provision for a Duracell pack for you when you're 50 to be able to look after your child, because if it cries 3 times a night and you don't have those batteries, I know I'm keeping you short here. So I believe personally, if you're asking me what it is, it's pure exploitation of female naivety. There is nobody that tells you, and there is a paper from Anna Kobo, and you're very welcome to look at it. It was presented at ESHE last year, that says in order to have a 99% chance to conceive after freezing eggs at age 20, you need, I think, around 70 eggs frozen. So if you want to pay for so many cycles of IVF to have 70 eggs frozen and have a baby at 50, you're all very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. Lina.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with the previous speakers. I agree with both of them, but I would like to mention or to add one more factor, which is, besides childcare, which is of course very important, the shared responsibility, which maybe is not something that you experience so much in your societies, but here unfortunately there is no shared responsibility between the spouses concerning the childcare. So that's why, of course, this is another factor that we should take into consideration. But allow me to remember of a very famous professor of our university who unfortunately passed away very, very early, Professor Iota Kravaritou, who served at the EUI in Florence for many years. And she also was a university professor at Aristotle. When we were discussing, she was a very convinced feminist, and we were discussing at some point why isn't sex equality, gender equality, why is it so persisting in Greek society or in society in almost all over the world? And of course, if you compare the Mediterranean societies, let's say, with Scandinavian societies, where if you go there, you see parents of 20, 25 years old, but they are both of them with the child, or even a lot of fathers with the child, okay, which is something that you wouldn't see here in Greece, for example, or in many Mediterranean countries. So Professor Kravaritou said, well, I gave many factors, this and that, what should we do? 1, 2, 3, 4, 10 things. And she was looking at me. And then at the end she said, you know what, just amongst us, only when women are freed from conceiving and giving birth, maybe in something like a Platonian society, which will never happen, of course, but nevertheless, thank you.
Ευχαριστούμε πολύ. Υπάρχει κάποιο άλλο από τις ερωτήσεις που δέχτηκες? Όχι. And now we come to our friends from neighboring Italy. If you could please give some short answers to the questions.
Okay. Short answer to very complicated. The first one, why Spain, Greece, but I want to focus on Spain and Italy, are so close for cultural and also political religious background, and why are so different when coming to regulate arts. I compared Italy and Spain, and I conclude that it's not only a matter of pressure because also in Spain we have a very strong church with and they had a very strong reaction to the every reforms, also the law in 2006, and also when the majority, the Partito Popular, came into power. After the entry into force of the law of 2006, they decided to reform the original version of the law, but they did not completely overturn the law. So the framework, the general framework, let me say the principles, the general principle remain the same, even if from a political perspective, the two majorities were very, very different. So I think it's a matter of pressure, but it's also a matter of, let's say, way of thinking of the role of the law when going to regulate life sciences and medical activity. So I think the two parliaments I'm referring to Spain is not paradise. I don't want to say that, but when they come to decide how to regulate arts or also end-of-life decision, it's not the matter which is the limit that legislator must do for itself when decided to regulate. And I think that I consider the Italian one a system characterized for a fragile rigidness, because at the end of the day, after 30 or 40 decisions, the nature of the law is completely changed. The content of the law is not completely, but the most part of the law, for the purposes, the gametes donation, PGD, woman consent, they are changed on the pressure, on the intervention of the Constitutional Court and the ordinary judges on the ground of the direct enforcement of constitutional principle. We can discuss about it if this is the right way to intervene, but this is what it happened. On the other hand, Spain, it seems to me, can be considered as a system characterized for strong flexibility. The rules in Spain, you can discuss the rules in Spain, but they are not a completely, there's not a complete freedom to have access to PGD, to also to surrogacy is forbidden even in Spain, and they are facing a lot of concerns at the judiciary level in the few years. So things are very much more complex than simply to look to the content of the law. So this is, I think, there's the reason of the difference is more on the side of the parliament more than the society or let's say the method of the lawmaking process and the purposes and the theory that is gone behind the lawmaking process. Last thing, just one thing, so the criminal offense is going against doctors. Yes, is Article 12 that say anyone who, now the prohibition and the offense linked to the gamete donation has been quashed down by the Constitutional Court, but there's both criminal offense, administrative fees, fine, but also in few cases also a suspension from exercising the profession up to 3 years for physicians and doctors involved. That violates the content of the law. And I think I must stop.
Very much. You want? Yes.
A minimal comment on the sanction for physicians recommending CBRC, who was the person. Just need to add something to Simone. There's a difference between recommending a service and advertising the commercialization, and this last gets a higher sanction. Moreover, the doctor in a public hospital cannot send the patients away, of course, for deontological reasons. Finally, as to association and similars providing information on services legally available abroad, the European principles established in the case of abortion in Ireland find application, so that's it. Facebook, it is a matter of information. The society is offering one extra service, but the problem is that who's telling the fair information to the woman who undergoes the choice? Last thing, the real life of people. The problem is that as legal scholars, we don't know that about real life of people, but from the legal viewpoint, once the pregnancy started, all pregnancies are equal from the legal viewpoint, and access to treatments, healthcare, and so forth, so on and so forth. So nobody shall be discriminated against because the pregnancies has started in a different way. And can't say more about it, sorry about that. And that's it. The very last thing on the role of politicians, the Italian situation demonstrated that medical and scientific dimensions need to talk to the lawmaker, especially in these sort of things. Because how could a lawmaker know how embryos are produced, and how could this sort of thing be effectively regulated? That's it. Thank you very much. Sorry for late. Okay. And visit our website. Okay.
Edgar wants to have a very last...
I don't want to keep you long, but I think it's important to specify something in relation to egg freezing. And there is a group of females that should consider this offer if they work for these companies, and they are the ones with a risk of premature ovarian failure in the family, the ones that have conditions like endometriosis, the ones that are at risk of losing their reproductive potential early in life. And For those women, this is a beneficial initiative, and in fact, maybe governments should fund this alongside IVF services, as they should fund oncology cryopreservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Edgar. As you all realized, Dr. Mokano has a long-standing experience. Έχει μακρά εμπειρία στα θέματα αυτά και είχαμε την ευκαιρία να συνεργαστούμε και στο πλαίσιο της ΕΣΡΕ και τώρα της IFFS και ήταν χαρά που τον είχαμε σήμερα για το θέμα αυτό. Όμως, κλείνοντας, θα χρησιμοποιήσω το προνόμιο του συντονιστού να πω δύο λόγια μόνον. Νομίζω, και συγγνώμη που θα επανέλθω στο θέμα της Ιταλίας, η πληροφόρηση, η εντύπωση που έχω είναι ότι υπάρχει μια διαφορά και η κυρία Παπαδοπούλου έχει ένα δίκιο. Η αιτία που εγώ έχω τουλάχιστον σχηματίσει στο μυαλό μου συζητώντας με πολλούς Ιταλούς φίλους και συναδέλφους είναι η πολύ μεγάλη διείσδυση και επιρροή της Εκκλησίας σε όλα τα κόμματα. Η διαφορά δηλαδή, η πολύ μεγάλη ίσως να οφείλεται στο γεγονός ότι η Καθολική Εκκλησία έχει πολύ μεγαλύτερη πρόσβαση και επιρροή σε όλα τα κόμματα, ακόμα και στο Κομμουνιστικό Κόμμα, σε αντίθεση ίσως με άλλες χώρες όπου αυτή η επίδραση να μην είναι τόσο ισχυρή και γι' αυτό το λόγο οι policy makers, οι law makers μπορούν και διαφοροποιούνται. Επίσης στο θέμα του Facebook εγώ θα ήθελα ελαφρά να διαφοροποιηθώ λέγοντας ότι πιστεύω απόλυτα ότι πρέπει πρώτον να συνεχίσουμε δυναμικά την ενημέρωση των νέων κοριτσιών από το σχολείο ακόμα για το ποια είναι η αναπαραγωγική ηλικία, πώς θα πρέπει να προσπαθήσουν να εντάξουν την αναπαραγωγική ατζέντα στο πλαίσιο της καριέρας και της σταδιοδρομίας και βεβαίως να βελτιώσουμε όταν βγούμε από την κρίση τις κοινωνικές παροχές, όμως πιστεύω όχι η διαφήμιση της Facebook αλλά η τεχνολογία αυτή καθεαυτή ότι προάγει την αυτονομία των γυναικών. Και θα θυμίσω σε όλες και όλους ότι ανάλογη συζήτηση είχε γίνει όταν βγήκε το αντισυλληπτικό χάπι. Και τότε λοιπόν είχε γίνει ακριβώς η ίδια συζήτηση και υπήρξαν ακριβώς οι ίδιες κριτικές για το αντισυλληπτικό χάπι, το οποίο θα προήγαγε την πορνεία, την εκφύλιση των ηθών, ότι προσέβαλε τις γυναίκες και ούτω καθεξής. Θεωρώ ότι και το ένα και το άλλο προάγουν την αυτονομία των γυναικών, αλλά όχι μόνα τους και ούτε με διαφημιστικά εγχειρήματα σαν της Facebook και της Apple, στο πλαίσιο μιας ολοκληρωμένης στρατηγικής που θα ενημερώνει τις νέες κοπέλες και τα αγόρια, αλλά και οι κοπέλες που μιλάμε τώρα, για την αναπαραγωγική του ζωή και πώς μπορούν να κάνουν έναν προγραμματισμό της αναπαραγωγικής του ζωής, εάν και όταν θέλουν και όταν το θέλουν. Θα ήθελα να κλείσουμε εδώ για να από σεβασμό και προς τους μεταφραστάς μας οι οποίοι έχουν εξοντωθεί 3 μέρες από τις μεγάλες και μακρόχρονες συζητήσεις μας. Καταρχήν θα ήθελα να πω 3 λόγια μόνον. Θεωρώ ότι στο θέμα της ανωνυμίας και της αποκάλυψης του ονόματος είναι σαφές ότι υπάρχουν διαφορετικές προσεγγίσεις, όχι μόνο νομικά αλλά και φιλοσοφικά. Υπάρχουν κάποιοι από εμάς που πιστεύουν ότι η ανωνυμία είναι προτιμητέα, ενώ υπάρχουν και άλλοι οι οποίοι πιστεύουν ότι η αποκάλυψη των ονομάτων ή η δυνατότητα γνώσης των ονομάτων είναι καλύτερη για την αυτονομία του παιδιού. Δεν μιλάω από άποψη νομικής, γιατί εκεί μας καλύπτουν οι νόμοι. Όταν ο νόμος απαγορεύει, απαγορεύει, ή όταν ο νόμος επιτρέπει, επιτρέπει. Αλλά μιλάμε τώρα σε επίπεδο ευρύτερο και φιλοσοφικότερο. Το δεύτερο μεγάλο ζήτημα, το οποίο νομίζω συζητήθηκε, ήταν το θέμα της δυνατότητας των ομόφυλων ζευγαριών να έχουν πρόσβαση στις τεχνικές υποβοηθούμενης αναπαραγωγής και νομίζω ότι εδώ μπορούμε να πούμε ότι υπήρξε κατά κάποιο τρόπο συναντήληψης, consensus, ότι θα πρέπει να έχουν τη δυνατότητα. Από εκεί και πέρα βεβαίως τα διάφορα νομικά συστήματα μπορεί και το κάνουν, προβάλλουν δυσκολίες σε ό,τι αφορά την αναγνώριση, την καταχώρηση στα ληξιαρχεία και στα μητρώα και αυτό είναι ένα ζήτημα το οποίο πρέπει να δούμε. Το καλό νέο στην υπόθεση είναι ότι όπως έδειξαν οι εργασίες της κυρίας Γκόλομποκ αλλά και της κυρίας Παπαλιγούρα, η ψυχοκοινωνική εξέλιξη των παιδιών που μεγαλώνουν σε αυτές τις νέες μορφές οικογένειας, συναισθηματικο-κοινωνικής συγγένειας, ότι δεν παρουσιάζουν προβλήματα, αλλά αντίθετα είναι εντεταγμένα απόλυτα στο κοινωνικό σύνολο χωρίς κανένα ιδιαίτερο πρόβλημα. Ως εκ τούτου αυτό μας λύνει τα χέρια για να μπορέσουμε να προωθήσουμε την εξασφάλιση της ίσης πρόσβασης σε όλα τα άτομα στην πολιτική εννοώ ατζέντα. Τέλος, το μεγάλο ζήτημα της παρένθετης μητρότητας. Δεν υπάρχει αμφιβολία ότι είναι μια μεγάλη πρόκληση. Οι περισσότερες χώρες της Ευρώπης δεν επιτρέπουν την παρένθετη μητρότητα. Οι χώρες που την επιτρέπουν είναι πολύ λίγες και οι χώρες που την επιτρέπουν χωρίς περιορισμό μόνιμης κατοικίας είναι η εξής μία, η χώρα μας. Εδώ και μερικούς μήνες, 6 μήνες περίπου, 5 μήνες. Δεν είμαι βέβαιος και το έχω ξαναπεί εάν και κατά πόσον ο νομοθέτης μελέτησε το θέμα επαρκώς και εις βάθος, όπως κάναμε εμείς αυτές τις 3 ημέρες, κυρίως για τις πιθανές περιπλοκές και συνέπειες, διότι είναι προφανές, ακούστηκε, ότι μπορεί να παρουσιαστούν, μπορεί κάποια πράγματα να πάνε στραβά και έχουμε παραδείγματα τα οποία ανεδείχθησαν εδώ που πήγαν στραβά. Άρα λοιπόν δεν είμαι βέβαιος αν όλα αυτά τα σκεφτήκανε όταν το κάνανε. Δεν είμαι αντίθετος που έγινε, απλώς λέω ότι αυτά τα πράγματα πρέπει να τα σκέφτεσαι και να έχεις και να τα οργανώνεις κάπως καλύτερα. Εν πάση περιπτώσει όμως το έχουμε και η χώρα μας είναι μια χώρα προορισμός. Άρα λοιπόν χρειάζεται να εντείνουμε τον διάλογο για να δούμε κυρίως, γιατί αυτό που μας ενδιαφέρει είναι πρώτον η ευημερία του παιδιού και είναι προς αυτή την κατεύθυνση πολύ θετική η απόφαση του Διεθνούς Δικαστηρίου, η οποία το έθεσε ως πρώτη προτεραιότητα και αυτό δίνει ένα στίγμα τουλάχιστον στους εθνικούς νομοθέτες και δικαστές πώς να το χειριστούν, αλλά και δευτερευόντως βεβαίως και για τα ζευγάρια τα οποία αναμφίβολα αναγκάζονται να ταξιδέψουν και να υποβάλλονται σε κόστος ψυχικό, σωματικό, οικονομικό και λοιπόν. Θεωρώ ότι οι συζητήσεις μας, ελπίζω να εκφράζω όλες και όλους ότι ήταν πολύ ενδιαφέρουσες και επικοδομητικές. Εγώ τουλάχιστον έμαθα πάρα πολλά και πραγματικά ελπίζω ότι και εσείς απολαύσατε αυτό το τριήμερο εδώ. Θα ήθελα κλείνοντας να ευχαριστήσω πρώτα απ' όλα τους ξένους συναδέλφους οι οποίοι εγκατέλειψαν δουλειές, σπίτια και διέθεσαν το Σαββατοκύριακό τους για να είναι μαζί μας, τους Έλληνες συναδέλφους, ομιλητές, προεδρεύοντες, συντονιστές όλους και επίσης εσάς όλες και όλους που παρακολουθήσατε και είχαμε full house όπως λέγεται επί 3 μέρες μέχρι Σάββατο αργά το μεσημέρι. Και τέλος, νομίζω εκ μέρους και της κυρίας Καστανίδου και μου θα ήθελα να ευχαριστήσω τους νέους συνεργάτες μας, είναι νέοι συνάδελφοι, οι οποίοι ουσιαστικά αποτελούν την ψυχή του προγράμματος και την ψυχή της οργάνωσης αυτής της εκδήλωσης, που νομίζω θα συμφωνήσετε ότι ήταν πολύ καλή. Σας ευχαριστούμε όλους και όλες πολύ και... Η επόμενη θα είναι τον Απρίλιο, σημειώστε το, οπότε θα έχουμε συνέχεια.
Νομίζω είμαστε εντάξει. Ας τα σβήσω και αυτά, γιατί να μείνουμε εδώ. Ναι, ναι.